All right, everybody, welcome to the Middle Ground, Mike. We've got a great guest here tonight. Got to know him a little bit. Welcome to the show, Brent.
Hey, thanks, Joe. It's great to be here. I'm honored.
Yeah, I mean, like I had told you earlier, man, your background made me go, I got to have a conversation with this guy. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah. Give us, just kind of give everybody a little bit of a general background about yourself.
So I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California. My parents are both from Detroit. So dad grew up in a Italian Catholic household, mom in a Polish Catholic household. And so I got Midwestern roots. All my cousins, aunts, and uncles are still back in Michigan, but my dad hates the cold weather. So flew out to LA, had me and my sisters out there, and yeah, that's where I got my start. Went to Catholic high school, and then I went to USC, and I started my international relations major in about January 2001. So, 9 months later, 9/11 happened, and I'm sitting in my fraternity house around all my buddies, and we're watching this like horrific thing unfurl on the TV, and we're all 20 years old, and we just had no idea what's going on. But I was technically studying this stuff. Everybody else is studying business or film or whatever. When they put Osama bin Laden's face on the screen, they said, "This is the guy we think that probably did it." Everyone looked at me and they're like, "Well, who is that guy? Like, tell us." And I'm like, "I don't know who that guy is." So, I mean, everyone responds to things like that differently. I had some buddies who were just like, they were so mad they want to join the military immediately. Some guys are very scared. They would run and call their parents who were, in Seattle just to make sure they're okay. But what my brain just did on its own was just get like intellectually fascinated with this thing that looked like it is going to change the world. Like the world's not going to be the same after this happened. And it happened to my country. And it doesn't feel like anybody like knows why it happened or how it happened. And so I don't know, that's just where my brain went. So I immediately started doing a handful of things. Like I started reading the LA Times that got delivered to where I was living at the time. And, it was Middle East stuff in Iraq and Afghanistan and Osama and George W. Bush and Cheney and Rumsfeld and Condoleezza Rice on the front page every single day. So I got my bearings that way. I took a counterterrorism class. I took global economy. I changed like the classes I was taking. I wanted to like really hone in on what the hell this thing was. And I started taking Arabic language classes. And so let's see, right after I graduated, I flew to Lebanon. I got into an intensive Arabic course there. So I spent all summer of 2004 in Beirut. And I mean, that just changed my life. Like being in the region after this thing had happened, just trying to figure out what are people, what's on their minds? Like, do they support this? Do they not? And what I realized is, and Lebanese people, Arab people, Muslims, they're just like everyone else. There's a huge range of reactions to this thing. And I wanted to keep getting experiences like that really opened my mind, just to understand humans a bit better and understand our governments and societies a bit better. And so I flew to Egypt, to Cairo, and I was there for a year, and I got a master's degree in Middle East studies, and that was fantastic. I came back to the States, and I moved to Minnesota, and I taught Arabic at a language camp for kids for a summer. That was really wild. And then moved to DC, kind of where I belong. It's like the only place that really values the small skill set I had. I worked for Human Rights Watch in their Middle East North Africa division for about 2 years. So I got to learn about what happens when you immigrate from the Philippines to Dubai and you're working on their hotels and their casinos and stuff. Like, how are you treated? Well, it turns out like
Terrible.
they take your passport away. You're living like really bad. Like if you want to go somewhere to go visit your family, like
It's the
it's
modern version of a slave.
exactly. Exactly. And this
Yes.
happened all over the place. And then their criminal justice system, there's no fairness, there's no constitution as we know it or due process. It's just a diabolical monarchy, and they keep that stuff, suppressed. And it's still going on today. And we go and we watch the World Cup, and we go to Dubai, and we go dance in their clubs and stuff, but it is built on a thick layer of human suffering. So I got to learn about all that stuff. And then, the only other place that really valued what I had to offer was the intelligence community and the government. So in middle of 2010, I started the CIA in their counterterrorism center in the Syria Iraq department. And so when I came out of analyst training, the Arab Spring had just started, And so my job was to figure out the group ISIS, like, did they have an ability and an intention to strike the West? And so in 2012, when this was my job, they didn't. The answer was kind of no. But we kept the debate going. Meanwhile, all through 2012 and 2013, I'm writing papers that no one cares about because they're this kind of fledgling little group and they're fighting against the Assad regime and they're not really morphing into Al Qaeda, thank God. But then in 2014, there was a murder in Belgium and they found this guy and he had an ISIS flag in his duffel bag. I'm like, oh, now wait a minute. And then in 2015, you might remember there were a lot of attacks in Europe from ISIS. And then they started happening in the United States and Australia and Germany and Spain. And so my career went like this. It was like nobody cares to now what I was doing, me as an individual, was the most important thing in national security. So I got to travel all over the world and going mostly to like to our allies, to England, to France, Germany, Spain, Turkey, to brief their officers on what I'm seeing, like what does my research show me? And I felt like a minor celebrity because in their eyes, I've got more resources than the whole rest of the world combined. So I work for the US government. And might have been true. We've got assets in every country. We've got diplomats. We've got law enforcement. We have military. We also got the satellites, the National Geospatial Associations taking pictures. So I have the most resources. So when I came into the capital of whatever country, I mean, red carpet, the best food, it was really, really nice and really cool. But also, I mean, we're trying to stop the bloodshed in Syria, and we're trying to stop attacks coming from this group in Syria and Iraq, and we just like couldn't do it. It was such a mess. And the United States, we're really good at a couple things. We're really good at invading and breaking countries and breaking governments, but we're not good at anything after that. We're not good at putting pieces back together, like reprogramming a society for democracy. If you follow Iraq and Afghanistan, you see where I'm coming with
Case
that.
in point.
Yeah. And so, I mean, once once the thing was broken, I mean, we were just so impotent to put it back together, to make things better. And that broke my heart. I wanted and expected more from the US government, and it couldn't give it to me. It couldn't give it to me. So I resigned. I resigned at the end of 2015. And what I realized from my experience in the government is I really, really liked the writing process. I loved researching, using my brain really hard. And I thought maybe I could do this for the public sector, for the general public, to help inform people on like, here's a different way to think about things, things like that. So I did a little bit of journalism in New York and in Los Angeles. I worked at two public relations firms where I actually ghost wrote op-eds for politicians, members of the military. I would talk with this person, figure out like what do they believe, what are they passionate about. I would pretty much write a whole op-ed, then we go back and forth on edits, and then I would place it in the Washington Post or Foreign Policy Magazine, Detroit Free Press. You might have heard of that one, Chicago Tribune. Yeah.
Man, that's
Um,
awesome.
there's a lot of articles out there that are not under my name, but I wrote them, and it's because of like the training I got in the government. The training at the CIA is just, I mean, we're the Harvard of the intelligence community. They hire extremely well, and the people that I was in training with are just like spectacularly talented. And the training I got was absolutely top notch. It was the best professional experience I've ever had. But now, I mean, having worked in nonprofits, having worked for the government, having worked in the private sector, like the corporate private sector, I find them all kind of disgusting and revolting in their own ways. And I want to see what I can do as an independent worker and writer. And so for the last year or so, I just moved to Las Vegas in February, and I've got a Substack called Sleeping Giants, and I've got a few thousand subscribers. So I'm like endlessly grateful for, and I get to publish like whatever's on my mind, whatever I'm seeing, and it's really, really gratifying. And to have people like you take notice of what I'm doing is just like I'm like over the moon grateful for this. So thanks for having me, Joe.
No, and I appreciate it, Brent. It's like what you do and what you represent to me is extremely important because you got to have balance, right? And people got to be willing to recognize that their government's not perfect. It doesn't mean that it's all bad, but it's not perfect. And the founding fathers didn't want us to think it was perfect. That's something that we forgot. They wanted us to criticize the government. They wanted us to challenge it. But that part's kind of forgotten, and it'll be a long time before we get that back. But I had done a podcast a couple days ago with a gentleman who was, I believe he's from, God, what is it? Save the Elephants. Essentially, he's definitely more of like a Reagan style Republican. And I can get behind some of the Reagan style things. I did like some of the in general things that he did, and I thought he had some of the better leadership qualities that I've ever seen. It's not always about policy. Sometimes it's about how you can get people to get behind you.
Yeah, the great communicator.
Yeah, and but Syria is what you really made. So we were talking, right, and he's kind of, I want to say he's not like an interventionist, but I said, I don't think we should be helping some of these nations in terms of getting involved in their business unless their population is willing to do the same thing that our population did here. And so if your whole country is not willing to go out there and die for it, then you don't truly want it. There's not enough of you that are truly feeling a certain kind of way. And I think that's the fact that, to me, we always want to impose the West, if you want to call it that. Not like literally impose it, right? But go, hey, like the joke, right? America, freedom, in the Middle East type of thing, those jokes. Well, their culture is different, and that's okay. That is okay that their culture is different. It's not our job to tell them how to live. If those people are truly unhappy and they want a Western style system, if they can get a good movement going, like the Arab Spring, yeah, let's get behind it. If we think it's something that's good. But outside of that, no, mind their own business.
Uh,
Because for the most part, just from my perspective, I think a lot of them, the issue with a lot of terrorists over there is they just don't want us in their lands.
uh,
And I think I'm sure there's a lot more to it now than when it kind of first started, right? It's a lot more
uh,
complex now. But just from my observations and what I've read, it kind of started with, hey, we don't want you here.
uh,
And then
yeah,
it sprouted.
yeah. I mean, what you're saying is, yeah, a lot of people are thinking that way. Like, should we be there? Do we want it more than they want it? And what that makes me think of is it's famously like, was it 3% of colonial Americans like took up arms against the British? That's not more than half, you know? And then who supported it? And there were a lot of royalists in the colonies. So it's like, well, what's the percentage? Like, if it's 49, we don't support Syria, but it's 51, we do. And if that's the metric, then how do you even gauge that? Right. So in I'm thinking like Syrians they're just kind of the same as us. There's going to be a huge spectrum, right? Like the minute we show up, there's going to be 9%. They're going to lose their minds. They're going to go right to violence. And like honestly, if Syria invaded the United States, I bet 9% of us would go to violence. I might, depending on yeah, how those Syrian troops are treating us. And maybe like 100 of them are great, but if two of them like try to rape my sister, yeah, I might lose it. So
Yeah, it's
you can
natural.
it's natural. You can see how like a group of humans who probably want the same degree of liberty that you and I have in this country, it can really look like that they don't want it, but it's actually just an extreme reaction, human reaction that you and I would have.
Yeah, and so kind of like piggyback on that. I forget the gentleman's name now that took over after Assad fled. God, I forgot his name. But
Abu Muhammad Jalani.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of the Syrian people are behind him,
Uh-huh.
and to me, okay, I know he wasn't a fan of us, but now he's essentially the leader that those people wanted, and he's open to doing business with us. To me, that's how we should, like, okay, hey, they wanted this. They got behind it. They were willing to give everything they had to change their country. Whereas, and I'm not knocking anybody in Iraq or Afghanistan, not one bit. I'm sure Dearborn, Michigan is like the biggest Arab population in the United States, and they're great people. I know a lot of people from there. But like, look what happened when we stopped helping the Afghanis fight the Soviets. Look what happened when we left again. There's not enough oomph anywhere in there to really keep the Taliban out yet. It's there, but there's just not enough of it. Where in the United States, only 3% may have took up arms. but a lot more people were kind of, they were probably afraid for their lives, but behind the scenes they were kind of like, all right, yeah, man, I'll help you, but just don't tell nobody I'm helping you, and I think that's why we were able to win the war, because I don't think without that they would have been able to take, well, that and the French, but you know beat Britain, but but going back to the Middle East, same with Iraq, right? I mean, it's still I don't even know what Iraq is right now, and I'm not even sure if Iraq knows what's going on in its own country. It's a disaster. Not that Saddam Hussein was even somebody that should be in power ever, but their culture is different than ours, and I think that's something that we don't always respect when we go into someone's home, per se. And I think that's where we have the problem. And like when people talk about Al Qaeda, and I'm like, Al Qaeda is terrible. Like there's nothing good about them. But I think some people forget about the Mujahideen and fighting Soviets. And that's kind of what spurred Al Qaeda down the road. When we left Afghanistan and we said, deuces, hopefully it gets better for you. And that's what kind of starts sprawling, that's what really gave bin Laden his foothold. I've never really looked into how his personal beliefs were before all that. What I've read is that kind of really made him not like the United States.
You mean pulling out of Afghanistan?
Yeah, when we did back in when we were helping them fight the Soviets and we kind of left them high and dry. We helped destroy their country and then said, "Okay, see you later."
Uh-huh.
Charlie Wilson's war, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so bin Laden, Afghanistan's not his country, right? He's an
Yeah,
immigrant there.
Saudi.
And he's from Saudi Arabia. And
Yep.
so, from my research, I mean, the thing that makes him so mad at the United States is that during the first Gulf War, the United States came in and occupied the oil fields in Saudi Arabia to protect them from Saddam Hussein's military. And I read that bin Laden was so mad, like beside himself, at the Saudi royal family that they would allow these infidels onto Saudi land. Is to like Wahhabist Muslims is considered very, very holy Islamic land. It's like Vatican City to Catholics. And so that any kind of like any other religious military unit would have any control there is just like it made him explode. You can kind of see where he's coming from. And so he's really mad at the Saudi royal family, but his father is, the biggest real estate mogul in the country. And so his father was in bed with the monarchy. So you can't go really hard at the monarchy. And they ended up kicking him out. He was persona non grata in Saudi Arabia. After he had been an adult for a little while. At first, he went to Sudan, then he went to Afghanistan. And so when the Soviets invaded in 79, that was the clear and present danger from an atheistic non-Muslim invader. That was like the enemy that was right there. And so Al Qaeda used the United States to push the Soviets out. And they did a decade later in 89 when the wall fell and then everything collapsed in 91. But once the Soviets were gone, I mean, the United States, which is also propping up like Mubarak in Egypt, who would throw anybody and torture anybody in jail that was against his politics. So there are thousands of Muslims who were super abused under Mubarak. Meanwhile, the United States is sending Egypt $2 billion a year and doing military exercises. So he's looking at that, being like, "You're completely immoral." And like in one way, if you explain in a certain way, you can kind of get on his
Yeah,
side about this. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, and in no way am I advocating anything that Al Qaeda did, or not advocating, but sympathizing or excusing it, right? That was no matter who does something like that, to me, it's just not excusable.
mm,
But it's just not as cut and dry as the news makes it out to be, right? Like bad person, us good person.
right. But then, I mean, that begs the question, was the United States okay in attacking Afghanistan after 9/11? Because a lot of people say yes, right? I mean, they hurt us, so we hurt them. But Osama bin Laden sees it as not starting at 9/11. He sees it as we hurt them before 9/11. Therefore, this is his time to retaliate.
Yeah, and I guess I fall in the with Afghanistan. I remember reading that in the news, the Taliban offered Osama bin Laden pretty much on a silver platter to the United States, and we pretty much said no, thank you. in so many words is what I was reading. I don't know the full details behind it. I didn't dig too deep into that. I mean, I'm sure there was reasons that I'll never comprehend.
Mm,
But I believe that they were not against helping the United States, the Taliban, to a degree, find bin Laden, from what I
mm,
remember them publicly saying.
mm.
But at the same time, they harbored him, right? So the only reason they were willing to help him is because they didn't want to lose power. Not because they didn't like the guy. They were
Yep.
quite okay with him. And
Yep.
his money, mainly his money, probably more than anything.
Hmm. Hmm.
I think that's why Pakistan harbored him too at one point. It's because he had money. He brought wealth to the country.
Hmm.
Because I've seen a lot of these Facebook videos, where people go there, these food guys, right? And they try the street food and everything there. And these people like treat them just like they're their best friend. This one guy I was watching, there was, I believe it was like a Taliban soldier was like kind of sitting next to him, and he was eating this thing. And the guy kept going like, he was like, "Hey man, do you want some?" The guy just kind of started laughing a little bit, but it was just, hey, an American's here in the market in Kabul, like American normal citizen, and they're eating our food. You could tell the guy was just kind of like, what's this guy doing here?
Good question.
Yeah, I mean, the food looked really good. I've never
Yeah.
had it, but food on that show looked really good. I
Okay.
do like Arabic food. I think it's phenomenal, phenomenal. Some of it's a little too dry for me, but yeah, I like to put sauce on like everything, whether it's even if it's just like vinegar, everything. Germans love vinegar, man. Me, I've got four different kinds of vinegar in my house. I use
You're
vinegar.
serious.
Oh yeah, it makes it easy. When I eat food without vinegar, my stomach hurts.
Interesting. Okay.
So,
I should try
and
that.
yeah, it's when you look, Germans use vinegar, and that's kind of why they use schnapps and things. It helps them digest the food better. That's kind of why some of that came about way back when.
Wow. Okay. I got to try this. I got to go get my vinegar game up.
Yeah,
Help my
yeah,
stomach out.
it helps in digestion. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I grew up with really bad acid reflux. I mean, from the time I've got a 7-year-old and he's at it already, so now kind of started to dribble that in there a little bit. It's helping. You
Oh, that's
know,
great.
it's yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I was kind of thought my dad was, yeah, whatever, that's a bunch of hooey, man. I was born here, right? So I'm like, whatever. No, now that I'm older, yeah, I get why he did certain things, because I'm like, I don't think a lot of, well, people under the age of 30, 35 don't realize, man, once you kind of get past 35, the way you process food definitely changes.
Oh my God. Yeah. No one tells you that either. Like, no one warns you. No one gets
Yeah,
you
they
ready
say your
for it.
bones, but not the food.
Not the food. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like someday you're like, man, I enjoyed this my whole life. Now you're like, oh man, if I eat that, it's good. It's game over.
Yeah. Like all my buddies that 15 years ago, we would get together and we would just binge drink beer. Like no one can process beer anymore. No one
Yeah,
drinks it
no,
anymore. The pain is not worth it.
no, yeah. I'm especially. I mean, that night is fun,
Yeah.
but the next day, I'm not gonna lie, I binge drank in my 20s. What really kind of broke me off of binge drinking and doing that like a couple times a week with my buddies, St. Patrick's Day, and right, wake up the next morning on the couch and my bones hurt. Not, not my muscles. I could feel it inside of like the
Inside
inflammation.
the marrow was inflamed.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here and I'm like, man, I'm like struggling to like get off the couch.
Yeah.
I'm like, I like rolled off onto the floor
Yeah.
because my body just was like not functioning.
Yeah.
And at the time I called my girlfriend. I was like, I had, because I had my phone right there. I was like, I really need you to, like, I think I need to go to the hospital. I think I'm like, I don't know if I had a stroke or something.
Jesus. Oh man.
And she called her mom. Her mom was like, no, this is what they call, you drink way too much the night before, and you're hungover, and you might have been borderline having alcohol poisoning. Because I mean, we were just getting pitchers of green beer, one after the other, one after the other.
Delicious.
Oh yeah, it's good stuff. And it was Guinness. Some of it was, I should say, yeah, it dyed green somehow. I don't know what they did, man, but it was like, yeah, the green tint. They
Right.
had the
Yeah.
cheap beer too. Guinness is smooth, and then my stomach can tolerate it. I'm not a Bud Light guy, I can tell you that. That
Okay.
stuff, Bud Light makes me feel nauseous.
Really.
Just even the smell of it, taking a drink of it, I will instantly feel like I'm going to get sick.
Hmm.
But now you give me something that's like smooth, yeah,
Hmm.
I'm fine. Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, no, I think everybody did things like that in their twenties, or at least the majority of people have.
Yeah. No, I mean, hangovers after you're 40, it's got to be like 30% of what it feels like to die, to be dying. Like
Yeah,
actually, like everything's shutting down because we're going to go to the afterlife. So you don't need this body anymore. And it's letting you know it's a painful process. It's almost like a wake up call. You're like, hey,
yeah,
this is what it feels like to die a little bit. And so maybe don't treat us like that. And I'm trying to answer that call. I'm trying hard.
yeah,
But a couple weeks go by and like I forget how bad it hurts.
yeah. I've been there. Like obviously, Detroit Lions games. So I had season tickets up until this year, and I would tailgate, man. If the game's at 1 p.m., I'm downtown at 6 a.m.
Jesus.
ready to roll, man. Like, boom. By the time that game comes, I'm like, what's my name? Like,
Where am I?
not
Where am
literally,
I?
but yeah, I mean, but I'm just like that amped and that, then it's just kind of that part of it wore off, right? And then I didn't start getting, I didn't really drink too much. I still went there early, but
Mhm.
yeah, definitely needed to know who I was. It's
It's
like,
overrated. It's
yes,
overrated knowing who you are.
yeah, no, it is. I mean, it was before I was married. I don't know. I think it was a Green Bay Packers game, and it's back when they still took cash. Ford Field
Oh
don't take
wow.
cash no more. It's all card.
What's cash?
Right. I still like having cash. I keep cash on me. I feel
Yeah.
weird if I don't.
Yeah.
But there's a bunch of Green Bay Packers fans, but it was a lot of beautiful girls, and I was just like, yeah, I'll buy y'all a beer, And I'm like,
Mhm.
man, if I'd been sober, I would have never done that for a Packers fan
Mhm.
ever in my life. I'd have been like, you might look nice, but you like the Packers. That don't work for me.
That's a deal breaker. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah.
but yeah, you got kind of getting back. So I know kind of like what you had talked about, on your profile is like how Trump's approach is kind of definitely, can I call it, rattling the troops, right?
Mhm.
Rattling the global market, the global theme. Especially from your background, counterterrorism. Is he making the situation worse?
Yes. So there's famous research that says that democracies have never gone to war against each other. They've gone to war against a non-democracy, but two democracies to this day have never gone to war against each other. And my theory as to why that is because you don't have one person calling all the shots. If you think of a person like you or me or anybody, we've got emotions. We have good days. We have bad days. Sometimes we're hungover. And the decisions that we make are deeply selfish and don't take into account many other people's perspectives. As one person, I can't physically put my brain in your brain and see the world through your eyes. It's not something that we can do. But what we can do is we can govern by a consensus. Now, we don't live in a perfect democracy. There's probably a lot of good reasons for that. But we live in a representative democracy where there's a big pressure from the people who are not in government to take into account like the way we're seeing things. If you have a dictatorship, totalitarian, it's one person and if they get their panties in a bunch, I mean, they could do something really bad. And this has kind of been the way the human race has run for how many thousand years, ever since we started having civilizations. If you open up any history book, it's just, Cleopatra going to war against Caesar, going to war against Napoleon. There's always like one dude or one person at the top, just like getting tens of thousands of their people and just sending them off to their death, hoping to get a couple more miles of land. In 1945 we all got together like, hey, let's try not to do that anymore. And the democratic form of government is a thing that is like undergirding this system of nonviolence. So we're all going to get together, we're going to coexist, and we're not going to upgrade ourselves through war, through taking from somebody else. It's not a zero sum situation anymore. We're going to set up a global economy. It's going to be a ton of trade. Like, if you want these berries that only grow in Madagascar, like, you can get those. Like, we'll ship them over, we'll ship them stuff that they can buy things that they don't have in their country. This is a very, like, greasing the system is all for nonviolence. Like, the purpose of democracy is to, like, end the necessity of war. And so democracy means you don't have one person calling all the shots. Your original question was, is Donald Trump making it worse? And I said, yes, because he's trying to push American democracy back to where we used to be, where it's one dude, a Napoleon or a Caesar, calling all the shots. And like, if we're not at war and the economy's fine, sure, it like feels fine, but that doesn't mean we're not like way more vulnerable to something really bad happening simply because of what this dude is doing. That's my answer.
Oh yeah, no, that's a great answer, man. I don't know if you had seen anything, but I was very critical of the of his bombing on Iran.
Mm.
I felt it was. Do I think he's necessarily Netanyahu's stooge overall? No, but I think Netanyahu goaded him into it. I think he pushed the buttons. And I know a lot of people are like, well, Iran does support a lot of terrorism. I get that part, but I just don't know if Iran's in a situation where we really needed to go in there and do that. I get the nuclear part because do I think maybe the Ayatollahs would be more inclined to do something like that, like to kind of ship it off to do an attack? I mean, their history says yes, compared to like where North Korea is a little bit different, right? North Korea just wants self defense. Iran's got an axe to grind. So I could see that, but I felt like it did more of make things, if you want to call it, worse. It did not help the situation because, from my understanding, is Trump had at one point Iran, Saudi Arabia, I believe Qatar, UAE, and Israel all willing to kind of recently, right before all this really broke out, coming to the table to kind of try to figure things out.
Yes.
And I'm like, man, that right there destroyed it.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, Trump had a legitimate shot to do what no president in our country has been able to do, is to get the Middle East to come to the table legitimately. Oops, there we go. Get them to come to the table legitimately with Israel. And I was like, man, and I feel like Netanyahu did that for a reason, to make sure that didn't happen, to keep the war going. And I truly think that the next leader of Israel will be able to achieve some sort of level of, as long as they're not like a war level of, hey, let's call a truce to this to a degree.
Uh-huh.
And I think Israel has a lot to offer Gaza. Israel is very developed. They're very smart people. They're very good people, kind, the citizens, right? And I think they have a lot they can do to help the Palestinians.
Uh-huh.
They can really help them get on their feet and start mending those bridges. And I don't see that happening with Netanyahu there. And I felt like that bombing. I mean, to be fair though, Iran kind of did back down on some of their rhetoric pretty quick after that.
Uh-huh.
So I do get his point behind it. I just didn't. I think it kind of was counterproductive overall,
Uh-huh.
as an overall, procedure. Like, he did have that one general assassinated in his first term. Not saying I'm against it. I mean, they surrounded one of our embassies. You know, you've got to poke back. They slapped us in the face. You got to slap back. I mean, I get it, right? But I just don't. I don't. I mean, maybe there's something that I don't know about, right? But I don't know. It just didn't seem like the smart thing to do to me for like the international scene. What's going on in Gaza, Ukraine? It's like, man, we don't need to be poking the bear on another front.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
'Cause Russia's dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Are you a diplomacy guy? Do you think that we should lean harder into that?
It depends on the issue, right? I'm more of, I want to say isolationist because I do believe obviously we need to be in the world, right? But diplomacy should be first. Like with the tariffs, I felt like we should have had a lot more diplomacy with that before we went that route. I'm not necessarily against them because I agree with him that a lot of countries were taking advantage of our trade policies. And it was putting, your parents being from Detroit, they could probably tell you, man, everything just vanished. And here everybody said China, Mexico took our jobs. I mean, not being racist, but the countries did. Oh, they went there for cheaper labor. So there is, to a degree of me, even though I'm concerned, there's a degree of me that's kind of like, well, yeah, I mean, we do got to do something about this problem. But yeah, I do advocate diplomacy as a first action, obviously. But if you attack us, all hand gloves are off, man. If you attack us, like I'm talking like a full blown, something like an Israel type of thing, or like, nah, man, game on. You pretty much should run and hide at that point, right? But overall, I think diplomacy needs to be there, and it needs to be in good faith, not just words on CNN. It needs to be something that's exercised. To me, you need to do everything you can to try to prevent that situation. But if that situation happens, You need to go in as hard and as fast as you can and go home.
So is that what Trump did, do you think, with Iran?
To, to a degree, yeah, I think that was his attempt.
Mhm.
I just don't think it was the right time. You know, a lot of, I mean, outside of certain, politically, some people on the left were, he doesn't have that authority. Actually, he does, but you know, every president that I can think of, and I mean, even probably FDR, they've done things like that, right? It's just something that the president has the ability to do. Uh, I guess I'm just like, I don't know. When it comes down to it, I just don't feel like there was enough back and forth before it happened. And then kind of hearing some things is it was like, to a degree, both countries kind of gave each other a heads up, and I'm like, then what was the point? Like, hey, by the way, I'm going to come destroy your house later, so maybe you shouldn't be home. No, if you're the enemy, I don't care if you're at home or not, man. If you've got a nuclear bomb possibly down there, and I think you might use it on me, yeah, I don't care who's in there. That thing's getting destroyed. I'm sorry, you don't want anybody to die. Well, make sure you're not building a bomb to kill me. I mean, not that I'm devaluing any human's life. I just think at certain points, it's like, okay, hey, now it's game on. Before that, no, you got to use a lot of restraint. People should know that when you attack someone, that okay, now we need to really pay attention because these people are going to come after us. And I think that's where his first term, I thought he did a really good job at that. Where people were like, this guy's kind of nuts. So they weren't really willing to poke at him. I mean, they were definitely like, yeah, we don't really want to do this.
The madman theory.
Yeah, and I mean, it worked for him his first term. I mean, yeah, I'm sure there's a lot more, behind the scenes, right? But I mean, as an overall, I feel like that kind of worked for him. I think he's a little bit more open to attacks, like wanting to attack someone, you know, with the military this time around. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Pete Hegseth, is that how you say his?
Hegseth, yeah.
Yeah, Hegseth, yeah. I think there's a lot more to do with that because we have someone like that in charge. I'm not knocking him. He fought for his country. I don't know about, there's rumors about him personally, but, he did step up and fight for his country. So I can't knock the guy on a personal level, right? But he's a soldier, right? So he's going to be a little bit more open probably than a civilian would to, yeah, man, let's just smack him in the mouth real quick. I mean, and not all soldiers are that way, right? But he just definitely, you listen to him talk, that's definitely his way of thinking.
Yes. Yeah. You said something really important that a civilian's going to think differently. And that's part of our formulation of American democracy is that it's always a civilian president who is commander in chief of the military. And it's for exactly the reason that you said. And I mean, it goes back to what I was saying about why democracies even exist is to prevent war, especially the world wars that killed 40 million people in less than 6 years. Like we just can't be doing that. And so we really should not have men who are indoctrinated in military culture, leading like some of the biggest militaries on earth. Just a really bad. It's a bad formula. Hegseth, yeah, I mean, I got to tip my hat to anybody who joins the service. I didn't. I felt like there were other ways to serve my country that are not the military that I thought I
Yeah,
personally am better suited to.
you listen, man. What you did, not a lot of people can do. I mean, what you did and what you did to help, the country and around the world. Granted, you weren't out there with a gun, but it was just as important.
Well, thanks for saying that. I mean, we were nerds. We were just reading and typing and then doing public speaking. So it was like very nerdy work. It was like really gratifying. And when things go well, you don't get any accolades. When things go bad, the whole world comes down on you. So it's a precarious place to be. To work for something as benevolent as the United States government with all its flaws is just, man, that mission is like, it really, really gets to you in a way that working for a regular company or, it just, you can't get it. To think that if you work a little bit harder, that you can make other people's lives better, safer. I mean, that's it. I don't even know if any group of humans has even had that opportunity to do that or feel like that in human history. It's like it's such a unique being
Oh,
born living in the United States in 21st century, 20th century is just like it's so unique if you look at history. And so I want to take advantage of that. And yeah, it's like really, really amazing.
Yeah, it's not a lot of people have that opportunity, and that's just it's crazy, that and I mean I love the fact that you did, and that's I mean, like I said, that's definitely what made me go, man, I got to talk to this guy. I love to pick people's brains. It's just something I've always loved to do. I mean, like I told you, the industry I'm in, that's
Mhm.
literally my job,
Yep.
picking people's brains, figuring out how to get them to do things. I mean, that's just kind of like, um, but like, I guess, maybe from like your perspective, right? When we look at Russia, now this is just kind of like a personal thing. There's no documentation behind it. This is just a me thing. I feel like Putin, I mean, Russia's still the Soviet Union. They just call themselves a republic because of how it's run and who's in charge.
Mhm.
I feel like the Soviets are there. They just kind of changed their name. I mean, that's just a personal feeling.
Yeah, it's run similarly, except that I think it's more dictatorial now. Whereas, well, I mean, under like what Khrushchev and Brezhnev in the mid 20th century, I mean, yeah, they get all the cameras and accolades, but you've got a huge communist party apparatus underneath them, um, and I mean, it's just it all seems like it's Putin right now. He's got his oligarchs, but he's neutered them. Like they are absolutely at his beck and call now. So they don't have the empire that they had in the 20th century before, or during after World War II. They're not running, nine other countries that are around them. Thank God. I mean, they've got a lot of influence, like Belarus, Kazakhstan, for example. But thank God they don't have the sort of revanchist, expanding empire that they had back then, which is like a really good thing. But it is like to an extent capitalistic over there to a larger extent than it was in the 20th century. So they're flirting with capitalism, not as much as China is,
Yeah,
but
China's very confusing.
yeah, it's very confusing. Yeah, they still use the communist moniker, which is like, it's going to throw everybody off. Same thing as like the Democratic Republic of Congo. It's like not democratic nor a republic, but it's in its official name. So, and this is all smoke and mirrors, right? When you have an authoritarian, I mean, we created this system and like there's parts of systems that you can see and there's other parts that are ideals and sort of like social constructions, and one of those is elections. Like why does Putin have elections? Like they don't mean anything, they're not free or fair, but he still has them. It's because he needs to play the game. He needs to like do the smoke and mirrors to look like he's playing by the rules. China's got elections, like Africa has elections, they don't mean anything. As bad as things can be in those countries, I think it's really good that pressure still exists. That even like dictators in the Middle East, they still hold elections to like try to look appropriate. So I think that's a small win.
Like, and I think that's one area where I think pretty much almost all of our government kind of agrees with Trump for the most part is when he opposes China. The one thing I've noticed is pretty much both parties just fall right in line when it comes to that approach. And that's always, it's just always shocking to see, right? AOC even supports anything remotely Trump. But when it comes to China, she's definitely like, yeah, he's probably right on this one.
Well, the distinction that needs to be made is why is he opposing China? Because the reason he's opposing China is different from why I want him to oppose China. I want him to
It's real
oppose
estate
China.
for him.
It's real estate. It's like it's whipping his base up. It's making him feel like a kingmaker across the world. He said, I forget when, it was earlier in his administration that he's like I run the country and the world. It like slipped out as he was saying 20 other things to some reporter. I think that was very revealing. That's what he wants to feel like. And so when he saber rattles the US economy or the military at China, I mean, China's like three times our population
Right.
and they've got nukes. So it makes him feel powerful. And like, I mean, he's just as vulnerable to these psychological spurts of dopamine as anybody.
Yeah.
Well, probably more so. Probably more
Yeah.
so.
When it came to the tariffs with China, do you know who Kevin O'Leary is? He was on Shark Tank.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I really liked what he said. And I mean, he supports the president, but he even felt the president was very weak on his approach. He
Okay.
said,
Is it? Yeah.
Xi depends on support from the people, and those people need to be employed. He goes, so if you want to make Xi Jinping come to the table and bow more to your will and do business, put 400% tariffs starting tomorrow. He said, and you'll see Xi Jinping here real quick, ready to talk business. Because while we do need them for cheap goods, if it came down to it, we have more of an ability to survive on our own domestic supply and then with Canada and Mexico than China does. And China's economy, money wise, relies as much as that's like a big fallacy out there. Is people think like we owe China all this money and we actually don't. They're our biggest foreign creditor, but they own like such a small percentage of our national debt. It's like insane. But they, because I think the United States, what, 50% of China's trade, somewhere in that ballpark. I'm sure it goes up and down. Granted, it would hurt here, right? We'd probably go into a depression here, but we could survive and rebuild. Whereas China, if you wipe out 50% of the economy all at once, they're gonna it would just be pure chaos. They would
Mm,
literally the Communist Party would collapse within
mm.
months. There's not enough demand around the world that would make up for what we do.
You might be right, but
And
then go ahead.
I think Kevin O'Leary was right in going, yeah, man, like, yeah, it's gonna be a little painful at first. Is it? But we need to put the hammer down on them, make them come to the table, and go from there.
Mm. You know, he might be right, but you never know how much pain that move is going to cause to Americans and
Yeah,
American voters who might
yeah,
toss out whatever president did that in a couple of years. So that is Russian roulette, you know? It's
it,
like taking the gun and spinning it and doing this like it could be worth it or it could slip over to the other side and not be worth it.
it could be, but I just it feels like at some point we've got to do something. I want to say like knock China down a peg because that's definitely not what I'm trying to say, but definitely make China remember that hey, first we're the big dog in the room. You have a lot more people than us. You have a lot of money now, but remember where your money came from. And a lot of your technology you stole from us. So if we completely cut you off, you won't be innovating like you are right now. And I think that that kind of like message, you don't want to put it out there in the public manner, right? Because then that's going to be embarrassing or insulting. But that message needs to be given.
Back
Not that we
channel.
need to flex or overtake China. No, I'm not advocating it, but it needs to be like, hey, this is supposed to be a symbiotic relationship, not every time we don't like what someone does in some other third world country or another. Oh, now we're having all these problems. Taiwan, nope. Let's just, oh, that's just, I mean, all that's just flexing in political mischief. Now, I don't think Taiwan's political mischief. I think China really does want to take Taiwan back. I think what a lot of Americans don't understand is Taiwan was founded by the Chinese government slash leaders that were ran off by the current Chinese government.
Yeah, Chiang Kai-shek.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. And I'm like, a lot of Americans don't know that part. And I'm like, I think if they did, that I don't know. It's definitely a dangerous situation for us to back Taiwan like we do. I'm not saying we need to completely abandon them, but I don't know if China invades them. I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a smart idea to go in there.
Mhm.
Send them weapons, planes, whatever you want, but yeah, I don't know about putting troops on the ground for a situation like that.
Yeah.
That's definitely yeah, I don't know if that's kind of cowering down, but it just seems like a lose lose situation.
It could get very dicey. It looks very dangerous. If you look at the map, you're like, oh, wow, that's real. That's way closer to China than it is to us. Like the logistics behind it are absolutely mind boggling. But that's one of the more interesting parts of US foreign policy is the Taiwan question. Because for the last bunch of decades, the US policy has been strategic ambiguity, which is just like it blows most people's minds when they don't know about it. It's like we're not going to tip our hand to China so that we don't want them to be confident that they know one way or the other, like how much we're going to come to Taiwan's aid. And that's on purpose. And a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people like they need to like either send a message or make a decisive decision. It's just like
Me?
okay, hey,
Yeah,
a lot of really good people kind of have that instinct.
yeah.
But and this is the magic of diplomacy that a lot of people on the right, they don't care about diplomacy. I mean, Marco Rubio is about to fire 100,000 people or thousands of people from the State Department. It's not valued. But it turns out that this strategic ambiguity might be the thing that like balances the benefits and costs of our relationship with China. So we're going to get the cheap stuff and we're going to keep ourselves out of a war. Like not making a decision and not making not sort of showing our hand like in a poker game, like not showing our cards. That's actually what has kept the system running in the best way that it can be. So like being ambiguous sometimes is like the best strategy in foreign affairs.
And that is definitely very valid, probably more accurate than anything in how we need to do it.
I love
I
those
just
words.
I guess I feel like right now China's kind of poking at us, and I don't feel like we're responding in a way that China gets the point that we're trying to
Uh,
make. And I'm not saying that we can't even be ambiguous for the most part, but I feel like at some point we got to be like, hey, no, what you're doing is not okay.
uh,
A little bit more than a speech, but not necessarily a military action. That's kind of, I guess, where I would fall somewhere in that line when it comes to China, right? Because
uh,
now at war with China, they do have more people, but I do believe I mean, it would be bloody and probably would bankrupt both countries. But I do think we've got the ability to beat China, you know, um, because there's a lot of people in China that don't like their government. Their government just happens to have a whole lot of weapons to make sure they don't have a lot of ability to do anything about it. So I think
yeah.
that if it came down to an all-out war, I think we'd have a lot more support over there than we even probably know.
Uh,
And if it came to where, troops somehow ended up in their land, I don't think it would be like it would be if we invaded Russia. The Russian people, they love their country. They don't mind their government for the most part, at least not that they let anybody see. So I mean, I guess that's just like kind of my perspective on it. It's very nuanced and broad.
it also might be impossible to know because, like, what you and I know about Russian people and Chinese people is coming from the internet
Propaganda. Yeah.
propaganda. Yeah. And
Yeah.
those two countries are famous for,
Yeah.
they don't have independent media. And so it's just tough to know. Like what you said, it could be true. It could also be the reverse. It could be that like no one likes Putin in Russia and everyone likes Xi Jinping in China. My guess is that it's probably pretty similar in both countries.
Yeah.
That there's a ton of propaganda. A lot of people fall for it, and some fall for it through genuine belief, and others through self-preservation. It's just those are just human responses. And you got like probably 50% of people who are like kind of lean conservative and 50% lean liberal. And I mean, like liberal movements in both countries are just not organized or strong as they would be in a democracy. And so you got to take that into account. If they were given maybe an inch, they could take more of a mile. You would see that on the news, and oh, okay. And once like the spark of an anti-government movement kind of like gets lit and gets a little bit of momentum, you see a lot of people come out of the woodwork. People you thought were in support of the regime, now they're like, oh, get a taste of this. Actually, a person like that is Ben Franklin. We were talking about this before we started
Yeah.
recording. Ben Franklin was a huge royalist because he wanted more than anything, he wanted a position, like a high up position in the British government. He wanted to be like the governor of America, but on behalf of the Brits. It's only when like the stamp tax and like the tea tax hit in like the 1760s, where he's like, whoa, like this is not what I signed up for. This is not how England is supposed to be running things. And he got really sympathetic for all the the movement of the colonials against taxation without representation, and he completely flipped.
Yeah. I mean, they were all copycat. Benjamin Franklin definitely was. Without him, I don't think it would have succeeded in the long run. He was pretty fundamental. But it's crazy how certain things like a tax can make you flip sides.
People don't like taxes.
No, still to this day, people in America don't like taxes, and that's truly why I think no matter how much we would ever want it here, I don't think a European style system would work completely here because you would have like you could see European style riots in American cities where they burn down government buildings in mass.
Mm, wow.
I mean, 50% taxes here, like on the average citizen, that was like upfront in their face, not like through 5,000 different channels. Yeah, they would revolt. People would be
Mm,
like, are you nuts?
mm,
I think that's where you would draw the line because as much as we've advanced in everything as a country, when it comes down to it, Americans are still all about that dollar. How far does my dollar go? It's that dollar. Where's my dollar going to go? So you start taking a lot more of that dollar away from them, liberal or conservative, yeah, they're going to get upset after a certain point. It's just how we're wired in this country. It's just how we think. And
Mhm.
those two tax acts by the British, they ingrained it in our DNA. As
Mhm.
a country, like taxes are bad. Unless you're certain politicians just think taxes solve all problems. But you know, and I'm not taking digs at them. I just think that I don't even know that necessarily we need more taxes. I think we just need to figure out where the money's going a lot more than we know. And definitely curb spending in certain areas to help our own citizens out. We need to do more for our own people, but that's a whole I could go on about that for 5,000
That's
days.
a whole nother episode of
Yeah,
the
that's a whole
podcast.
nother episode, man. And so just kind of like I do got to ask you one joke, right? And it's purely a joke. Can you tell us who killed JFK? I know you can and probably don't know, but it's
Can't
you,
confirm nor deny what I
yeah,
know.
it's always like the running joke. Everybody's like, when's the government ever going to tell us? And I'm like, we'll never know. The people
Mm,
who know are all long gone and dead, and I
yeah.
guarantee you, none of them put it in writing.
Mhm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
sure as hell wouldn't.
Right.
If I did that, like I would never put that in writing.
Yeah.
So, kind of as we get towards the end here, from your perspective, is our government, and that's just definitely not the word I'm looking for, but are they as clueless sometimes as they seem?
Clueless about what?
Like so they play dumb, right? Case in point, like I was talking about the Epstein file situation, right? Depending which day you hear the news, oh, there's nothing there, and then now it's like Cash Patel and everybody's talking about leaving town because they're not getting full access to it. So is that like is how that playing out? Is that kind of, and I know you weren't in per se like that level, right? But is that kind of like, is that like the back and forth thing, or is that like a real thing, or is that just kind of for show type of stuff? I mean, I know every instance is different, but just more of a generalization.
Yeah. Here's my reading of that. So Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, who's the deputy FBI director, before they were in government, they were media figures. They had the headphones that you have on, and they had shows that were like wildly popular, and they spouted conspiracy theories. Right? So they had theories about, bad people doing bad things that they didn't have really that much like actual tangible provable evidence behind. And one was that there's this huge list of people who were going down to like Fantasy Island with Jeffrey Epstein and having all sorts of relations with underage prostitutes that Jeffrey Epstein like flew in from Latin America. And so did that happen? Yeah, I think so, because powerful men have some vulnerabilities, and that's kind of one of them. And I think they saw in Jeffrey Epstein someone who was going to be more discreet than anyone else. I mean, there are scandals kind of all the time of politicians visiting prostitutes. It's
Right.
like a trope. Like it happens so often, it's like a gag. It's a punchline. So, I mean, there have been reports that, Bill Clinton was on these Lolita Express flights. And so, if we examine what we know of Donald Trump's past, I mean, he loves the ladies. There's kind of no denying that. And so, do I think he would at least be open to like taste testing what Jeffrey Epstein was serving up? I think, yeah. Okay, so if the answer is yes, then that means he's on these flight manifests and he maybe potentially did some illegal things. And so now Kash Patel, as a media figure, he was saying that this is a huge conspiracy and there's all these people that are really, really bad. Now that Kash Patel is in Donald Trump's administration, he has to flip on that attitude. He can't push out these flight manifests because Donald Trump, his boss, is going to be on them. And Donald Trump doesn't want that, right? So now, to me, my understanding of human nature, like Kash Patel is trying to
He's
revive.
trying to put it out there.
Well, he's trying to protect his own reputation.
Yeah.
So he's got thousands of followers that are mad at him for not releasing the Epstein files. And Pam Bondi, who's the secretary, who's the the Attorney General.
Attorney General. Yeah.
Attorney General. She's the head of the Justice Department. The FBI is a part of the Justice Department. So Pam Bondi is Kash Patel's boss. So
Okay. I guess I didn't
Kash,
realize that part.
yeah.
Okay.
So Kash Patel is signaling to his audience. He's saying, I don't have access to these files. So it's not on me whether you see them or not. It's Pam Bondi, my boss, she's the person you need to blame for not divulging who's on the Lolita Express. That's what I think Kash Patel is doing. That's why he's threatening to leave town. It's all smoke and mirrors to keep his audience on his side from turning
Yeah.
him.
Yeah. And I did like overall some of like when he was in the nomination process, I did like some of his approaches to it, where he just kind of was like, hey, this is me. This is what I believed. And then when they would try, because you know how politicians are, right? They're always going to try to cherry pick your words and misrepresent them. And I loved when he would just sit there and say, oh, why don't you read the whole quote? Not just the part that makes you, you happy or look good. He goes, because there's a whole lot more context to it than just the base of the conspiracy part, right? He's like, there's a whole part that I said that you're not putting in there that makes it look different, you know?
Same.
And I guess that's kind of like the approach I appreciated out of him, rather than just how some nominees will be like, I didn't really like that. And it's like, no, man, we need to hold our politicians accountable to tell the truth, whether they like your view or not. But if I'm pretty sure there's plenty out there that they could find on Cash Patel to dog them, right? Just like any politician or anybody. So it's like to me, there was no need to misrepresent what he was saying.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But I also, I have a pet peeve. Like I get really angry when politicians with tons and tons of power like look into a camera and then lie to the people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, letting us know what's really going on is, I mean, that undergirds public safety. If we think something is going on that isn't, if we think like there's an attack imminent, we're gonna act as if there's an attack imminent, there's an existential threat, and like all of our decisions are gonna be different. And some of them are gonna be like really pathological and destructive. Like politicians with that much of a platform, they need to tell the truth. And that's why I'm not a fan of Kash Patel. Like he's looked in the camera and he's lied to us like a lot. You know, he lives in Vegas.
Does he really?
He lives in Summerlin, which is on the western side of Las Vegas, up against the mountains. And it's like a beautiful place to live. But yeah, he was very insistent of trying to run the FBI from Las Vegas.
Oh, I know he wants to decentralize it. I remember. I mean, and again, obviously, you would know better. I don't know the intricacies of a lot of that stuff, right? But his base principle, I thought, on that idea and the reasons behind it, I'm sure, a little bit probably personal, be closer to home. But, I did kind of like what he said. He goes, hey, we can get, if we can decentralize a little bit, we can get more people to the areas that are needed rather than some of these people sitting so far away and so disconnected from the reality of our nation.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm like, well, I mean, that was kind of the whole purpose of the Constitution, is to make things like that.
Uh-huh.
How our government's set up now with the power being so centralized was not the idea. It was meant to be spread out.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, yeah, I could get behind that. I don't think he wants to defang the FBI at all. I think he just wants to spread it out and use it strategically. Maybe is the right word to say.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's just there's a lot that I definitely don't agree with Cash Patel on, but I agree with just kind of, he's like, hey, this is who I am. I do truly think that he wants to release those files. I think there's everything in him that says this needs to be out there.
Uh-huh.
But I know there's a lot more than he'll probably ever know, right? That's above his pay grade.
Maybe.
And, I mean, he's pretty high up there though, but there's certain things that they're probably like, yeah, this is never going to come out.
Uh-huh.
And that probably puts him in a position where he's like, well, man, F this, I came here to find out what's really going on. And, and guessing he's probably not liking what he's finding.
Maybe not, but he's the director of the FBI, right? The
Yeah.
FBI is the premier law enforcement agency in this country. His actual job is to direct thousands of agents and officers to keep you and I and everyone we love safe. And so with that as his job description, I don't want him taking up a ton of his time looking at Jeffrey Epstein. He's dead. He's not no longer with us.
Yeah, he's not relevant per se outside of us just wanting to know what was really there.
Yeah. So I mean, no, he's
So,
his
you know, you
priorities are
no, I mean, kind of like touching on the Epstein thing and not like really like diving into it, right? It's just more of just like an opinion thing. Do you think that there really was like a Jeffrey Epstein really didn't kill himself type of thing? Because, they said the camera footage vanished or things that, do you think that that's a real thing or that's just poor management by the place where he was at?
that one's tough because to cover up a murder like that, I think is difficult. You need a lot of people to sort of, not go leak. I mean, we live in a leak culture because
Yes.
if you're one of the few people on earth that's got a juicy piece of information, you can get fame and fortune kind of overnight. So there's a giant pressure to come forward with that. And the fact that no one has, it makes me think that the suicide is probably the way this went down. The minute that's lost on the camera footage, like I'm not an audio visual, I don't know
Yeah.
anything about that technology. So I
But
don't know.
that's what makes people go, what?
Yes. Yes. Is it a smoking gun? Like, absolutely not.
No.
No, that shouldn't give anybody a ton of confidence that the murder theory is correct. Is it something that we should look into? Yeah, but should the director of the FBI be looking using his half of his time or all of his
No.
time to? No, please God,
No, we got
no.
bigger
Like
fish to fry.
bigger fit. Exactly.
I
Thank
would
you,
just
Jim.
I think a lot of people just want to know what's really there, right? Like no matter what it is, who it is, just put it out there because I guarantee you there's a lot of folks that are out there being holier than thou about a lot of things that if that came out, it would be like, oh, so you're full of it. You know,
Yep.
and I not that you ever want to not gotcha necessarily, right? But it's just you want to know. And here's the thing, I think even if they came out, none of them would ever go to prison. Just their positions in life and things like that. They would, first off, they would probably get pardons by whatever leader. None of them leaders are ever going to put their friends in prison.
What about Bill Clinton though? That's tougher.
So here's a link. I watched a Netflix documentary on Jared Kushner, and people don't realize in this country that the Clintons and Trump are tied at the hip. And it's very, I don't want to say very well hidden, but it's so well hidden in plain sight that people don't see it. So Jared Kushner's dad was Bill Clinton's number one fundraiser in New York when he ran for president, and he was Hillary's number one fundraiser. Well, Jared Kushner is married to Trump's daughter. Well, who do you think that Trump just nominated? I believe to maybe I think it was England or whatever to be ambassador. Jared Kushner's dad.
Mm.
Yeah, I know that's just kind of drawing correlations from coincidences. I'm like, just knowing what I've learned about politics in life, yeah, there's a lot more there than we'll ever know.
Maybe.
I'm like, I was sitting there, I just thought that I'm like, man, there's more connected than we know.
Mm. I think they were tight, and I think they're not anymore
Oh yeah,
because
yeah,
Trump and Hillary ran against each other, and we all watched
yeah.
every
That was
minute of
that
that.
was bloody.
Yeah, I think their animosity for each other is real. I think
Yeah,
it's real.
I think Bill Clinton could forgive him because Bill Clinton's just kind of happy-go-lucky type of guy,
Yeah,
just his
he is.
personality.
Arkansas.
Yeah,
Who's
he's just
no
kind of
one's
like, yeah, it's in the past.
yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know if that's a guy thing or it's just guys are just generally they can punch each other in the face. Supposedly, it's the myth of men, right? And then have a
Yeah.
beer later on.
Yeah.
But Bill Clinton seems like one of those guys. I know there's a lot of guys out there that are not like that. To be
Yes.
fair,
True.
but that's just generally the theme of guys,
Uh-huh.
right? Where it's, hey, no knock on my wife, I love you, but my wife has people that she's been mad at for years, and I don't ever see her forgiving them or me.
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, yeah, it's been a while, it's in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
Yeah.
That's just kind of my way of doing business.
Different folks.
But yeah, man, I definitely, if you're open, I would love to have you on a semi-regular basis, man, because I think we could definitely have some great content on here that I think people would love.
I'd love that too. Yeah, that's a great
Yeah,
idea.
yeah, your perspectives, man, are just like boom.
Thank
And
you.
when I say boom, I mean boom. And
Thanks.
I think that's what people need to hear. They don't hear that part.
Mm-hmm.
They just don't. And they not necessarily that they don't want to. It's not put out there for them to. I think if people hear these things, there's a market for the middle ground, right?
Mhm.
It's like they talk about the silent majority. To me, the silent majority is the middle ground. And they need a platform, and a platform that's willing to take, I'm tending conservative, but I think I'm definitely more middle of the road,
Mhm.
right? Because I do have some liberal positions,
Mhm.
but be able to sit there and be like, well, yeah, yeah, I agree, don't agree. I've done 2 episodes with a guy who's a progressive Democrat running in Missouri for the state house down there.
Okay.
And, we've become very, very good, very good friends per se, and definitely don't agree on a lot,
Mhm.
on a lot, but it's probably one of the more respectable people I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And one of my best friends in life, he's prints for all the Democratic Party around here, where I
Mhm.
live, does all their
Mhm.
printing and everything. And
Wow.
I'm telling you, he truly lives those values. When I say he truly lives it, it's not lip service, no nothing. He lives it. Hey Evan, this is still recording. I'll get back to you in just a little bit, okay, buddy? Yeah, I'll shoot you a message in just a minute. I'll, I, you know, um,
It's great TV.
yeah, I'll definitely edit that part out. He's a nice guy.
Mhm.
He's actually the founder of the Solutions Party.
Mhm.
Small party, but I definitely think it aligns a lot with liberal values. A lot of it does. Great guy. Great guy. He was we were gonna brainstorm later on, but I believe he's in Peru right now, so his like timing and stuff like
Yeah.
it's all like way over the map. But yeah, no, definitely I would like to have you on a regular basis, man.
I
Uh
love that.
yeah, I mean it's you're great to have on, man. And I mean I enjoyed the conversations and the answers especially, because a lot of people just don't understand that. A lot of people think the CIA is like, man, if you want, and I'm sure there's aspects to it that are right, but I think it definitely a lot of it changed when Edward Snowden did what he did. A lot of people are like, hey, there is a lot of good people, in there.
Thank you. I can
You know,
confirm there are a lot of good people in
yeah,
there.
and Edward Snowden again. I mean, I guess that depends how you want to look at what he did. Some people view him as a patriot. I guess I just don't know enough about it to have a full judgment on him. If what he truly believes is true, then yeah. I mean, I won't say I have necessarily every right, but every right to feel the way he did.
Yes.
Um, it was. I was very bummed when he talked about Obama and how he pretty much just said Obama was no different than everybody else. And I was like, oh man, that was kind of disappointing. That was definitely disappointing. But is what it is. I did vote for Obama the first time.
Okay.
I voted for him because he was going to go after the banks. And then he turned around and gave all the banking executives a gajillion bonuses.
Bailout.
Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you're no different than the rest. That really took the wind out of my sail for him because he talked about keeping talent in the United States. And I'm like, but they bankrupted the country. Why do we want to they're talking about going to work for China? Bye. Go
Yeah.
bankrupt them. Do us a
Yeah.
favor.
Yeah.
Like, why are we keeping these people? Like they bankrupted the country. I don't care if they run the biggest banks. They bankrupted the country. Single-handedly, that group of people helped create a system that almost took us down. And the fact that he gave them money was just like a man, that was a slap in the face of the very people that supported him.
Yeah. Yeah. There are parts of this country that are still reeling and haven't recovered from that crash in '08. Yeah. You and I are aligned on that, which is interesting. I totally agree with what you said that there is a silent majority as people in the middle that have, some perspectives on the right and some on the left, not really like hard and fast on most things, and that we're living in an age where in digital media the algorithms just take like the extremes on both sides and make it look like that's what's going on. It's just people screaming at each other. So I really support what you're doing here. I think I love
Yeah, I
your
appreciate it,
concept.
man.
Your concept of the show is fantastic, and your perspectives and principles totally align with like the presentation of your show, which is tough
Yeah,
to do. It's like a really good like media stroke that you're doing. So yeah,
yeah.
I'd love to come.
The credit all goes out for the name of it to my brother-in-law.
Oh, really?
Because I was like, yeah, it's the podcast, and I was just like, oh man, I don't know what to name it. I'm not a super creative person. This process overall has made me creative, right? But before this, I was not a creative person. I mean, black and white, cut and dry. That was just my persona, right? And him and I were, we're just, one night we're a Facebook Messenger, both had a couple drinks, we're just, back and forth, back and forth. And he's like, what about the middle of the road? And then he goes, actually, what about the middle ground? And then I was like, yeah, I was like, what else? He goes, the middle ground microphone. And then, kind of that's how we got the middle ground mic. And, we just kind of, so I'll shout out to him. I mean, he was the brains behind the name,
All right.
but it was, yeah, I mean, because our family dinners are all about politics. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, man, definitely, I'll shoot you a message and stuff, and we'll get a lot of that stuff taken care of, and yeah, let's see if we can figure something out to be like a semi-regular guest. I would love it, man, because I'm telling you, I think we can create some content that people are going to be like, yeah, let's tune into this when this guy's on there.
Oh,
Just
okay.
because your perspectives, man, that's like, and that's what, like I said before, people need to hear it. They need to know about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. And that's just, what you do is keep doing it, man, because we need more of that. We need more of everybody willing to put it out there, but in a genuine, non-jerk approach.
Hmm. Yeah, that's huge. And what you're doing is very important too.
I appreciate it,
Like
man.
lifting this middle ground up, like giving them a voice. I mean, that's going to save us. It's going to save all of us one day.
Yeah, and I mean, hey, man, I hope a million people go out there and try to do the same thing, because the more of it there is, the better it is for all of us, and
Yep,
the back
for
we can
sure.
get to what I like to always tell my son, that 90s style of living, where everything just seemed to be okay.
Okay. Yeah.
It just seemed to be. There was a lot of stuff going on, but everything just seemed to be okay. And that was because Republicans, Democrats in the 90s worked together. They, Newt Gingrich and Bill Clinton, they made a lot of things happen. So I just, I feel like if we can get back to that, we'll be great.
Well,
But
here's
all
to,
right, Brent.
here's to hoping.
Yeah, I'll just hit stop on this